This is round 4, extra turn. It's time for a very special episode of Game Brain. A week or so ago, 2 of our Game Brain crew packed up and headed off to Dallas, Texas to experience the awe, the wonder, and the increasing sleep deprivation effects of Bgg.Con. So please welcome fellow Bgg.Conner TREY to the podcast.
Hi, everybody. And the other person who went was Tom.
Yeah.
The third person.
In case you didn't know that.
Yeah.
That was me.
It was Tom.
That was me. That was me.
Too.
For those who don't know, Bgg.Con is a strictly board gaming convention put on by the fantastic people over at Board Game Geek. Runs from Wednesday to Sunday, the week before Thanksgiving week. Is that pretty much every year, the week before Thanksgiving week?
I think so. And they now have like a spring version, which is more family friendly. I think they have a cruise version of this con, but it's
BGG cruise. All right. Send your donations too. No, just joking. One day.
It's got to live in the dream.
One day. But TREY, you did not arrive on Wednesday for a Wednesday through Sunday con. You arrived the previous Sunday. Why was that?
Well, for the past 2 years, Tim Fowers, as well as I think his partner in this, Jeff Beck.
Tim Fowers is one of our esteemed Game Brain designers. He's one of our favorite designers. He does games like Burgle Brothers. He does games like paperback, hardcover.
Now Boarding.
Now Boarding.
And now Sabotage.
Which we will be talking
Burgle
about
Brothers
today.
2. Yeah, Tim is a friend. Tim's a very well-known, very successful game designer, doing his own thing, publishing his own games. So kind of, doing it for himself in a way that a lot of people are taking note of. But this is the second year of the Tabletop Network, which they've done in the 2 days leading up to Bgg.Con. And the way to think about this is, because I don't think it's any big secret, but this is like a GDC for board gamers.
GDC being Game Designers Conference, which is the big video game conclave that meets every year in San Francisco.
So yeah, think of, people who are either, making games or want to make games, meeting and watching PowerPoint presentations on all kinds of different subjects that are germane to board game design, the industry, both making it and kind of living it in the board game world.
Who were some of the big names that were there this year? Who did you sit down and listen to?
It was a fantastic lineup, and here's the thing. So if you're listening to the podcast, you're already showing you have a high level of interest in board games. So this is something that pretty much anybody listening to this could probably do if you're interested in. You do not have to be like an established board game designer in order to go.
I arrived on Tuesday, and Tim was kind enough to let me basically attend Tuesday, and I have designed.
You weren't supposed to say that.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't do. I paid money. I don't know.
Yeah. Right. You definitely paid money. They did a bunch of presentations. You can attend the conference virtually. There's a much cheaper ticket you can buy to see all of the streams of the shows, but I think they will make those presentations available, somewhere down the line. Again, kind of in the model of how GDC does it. But okay, so some of the designers that were there, they had a fantastic lineup. They had Martin Wallace.
Love him.
So you love him so much, and yet we never talked to him the entire weekend. We were too intimidated.
We kept running into him. We were having drinks next to him. I think 3 out of the 4 nights.
He scares us.
We were there.
Martin Wallace scares us. So we had Matt Leacock of Pandemic fame. We had Rob Davio, a number of games, including Pandemic Legacy. Alan Moon, creator of Ticket to Ride. Elizabeth Hargrave, Wingspan, the big hit of 2018, I would say.
2019?
Is it 2019?
This is 2019.
Okay, I thought it was 2018. Okay, of recent memory, Wingspan, very large.
Probably the most important
breakout game. Yes,
the most important game of the last few years, for sure.
Yeah, Cole Worley of Root and Pax Premier fame. Isaac Childress, Gloomhaven, #1 game on BGG, was there. Nikki Valens, Eldritch Horror, Mansions of Madness, 2nd edition. Eric Roos, Spirit Island fame, gave a talk, as well as the Ludology guys, Gil Hova, who's designed the networks.
Right.
Talked, as well as Jeff Fingelstein, who's designed Space Cadets and has kind of moved away from Ludology, but is still a big figure, I think, among designers, as somebody who's looking at the mechanics and craft of board game design. He's got a new book on kind of doing the taxonomy of all the different mechanisms. In fact, so much so that they had to revise BGG's mechanism list, kind of based upon his book, I would say,
which we brought up a few weeks ago. So these famous game designers, you can pick them out of the crowd easily because they have the top hat and the tails. And is that fair to say?
Some of them have unique branding. Tim has a hat. Tim Fowers has a hat.
A leather pith helmet, would you say? Is that what it is?
I think Tim's real brand is if his artwork has this great kind of, spy look to it. Or,
sort of Incredibles.
Yeah, Incredibles.
Very
1950s. Yeah.
1960s kind of smooth. It's very cool. It's a very cool look for sure. I was lucky enough to just peek my head in a little bit, and it was wonderful. It was amazing. I thought that some of the lectures were more on the intellectual academic side of it, but some were very, very practical. I found those to be kind of inspiring in terms of somebody that has never designed a game but kind of wants to start, and people giving some very, very practical, very great tips, like real mentorship. I felt like happened there.
And they had an internship program running this year. I think they provided internships for like 10 different people to visit, to become part of the network who might not be able to afford to go otherwise. So they're actively looking at mentoring new people.
That's fantastic.
In the industry. It's also set up so that like in the mornings they do kind of like the big presentations that they know everybody's going to want to see, and in the afternoon they break them up into stuff that's a little bit more specialized, and you attend the one of the two or three things going on at the same time that kind of captures your interest. And so it's kind of easier to miss on those. Like not everybody wants to go and see a lawyer do a presentation about intellectual property rights in the board game world, but that may have been like the most important thing that I attended.
Room was packed.
If you are an actual, not that I am, if you are an actual board game designer, understanding intellectual property and what you own and what you should be protecting and what you can't protect and shouldn't worry about, like this is actually very important stuff.
Right. And you cannot protect the mechanism.
Unless you're Wizards of the Coast, in which case you can't claim, because you're so big.
No, you claim you probably can't defend it, but you can fight it.
There have also been I forget the lawyer's name who I'll look it up, who did this presentation, but the law is also kind of inconsistent on some of this stuff, so it's not exactly a complete hard and fast rule on a lot of these things.
The problem being, of course, that in the board gaming world, nobody has the deep enough pockets to really fight these things if somebody thinks that they have a good case. So you have to be right. You have to basically be working from the area of, I think this is the safest thing to do.
Yeah. You shouldn't necessarily. I think one of the classic kind of thing you tell a new board game designer is don't worry about people stealing your idea. Like that's not really a thing. A, you can't protect it, and B, people don't really do it. There's a few kind of classic cases where it has happened, but like there's nothing you can do about it. And it tends to be more like they made a game in China. It's the exact same game.
Not unlike screenwriting. The times when somebody actually steals a screenplay is vanishingly rare in comparison to the number of people, and people tend to be a little too precious. Beginning writers tend to be a little too precious and hide their ideas a little too much.
Right. Like get over yourself.
A little bit.
Just make a good game. But there is some stuff that you do want to protect the title of the game. You do want to protect the artwork. You do want to write your contracts in the right way, and so that how you get your game back if you're unhappy with your publisher and they do bad things with it over the first couple of years. Like how what are the actual terms for getting your game back, and what do they have to do in order to fulfill their side of the contract. So it was an interesting. There were a lot of interesting subjects. That was one. I think Elizabeth Hargrave did one that I thought was really fantastic, where she looked at the data of women in board games.
That's great.
Just in terms of like where women actually are as far as like what games women like, and just trends. Not making any like hard and fast rules about like what women like, but the cross section of female gamers is different in terms of the types of games that they like.
Sure.
And clearly she understood these lessons in making Wingspan, a game that has appealed to all kinds of gamers, but
a huge spread.
But especially
right?
especially women. In fact, I think the title of her talk was something like "My wife loves your game," and she's both happy and tired of hearing that.
That's great.
Like, why isn't your wife here? You know,
right.
like, why am I always talking to the wife of the person? I mean, the husband of the person who loves my game.
Fair enough. That's great.
So, but she did a PowerPoint. She made there's actual link to the whole presentation on her Twitter. So there's a lot of good research she did. If you were interested in looking at a cross section of women in board gaming, go to Elizabeth Hargrave's Twitter, and she has linked to her presentation there, and it's definitely worthwhile taking a look at.
So you were there Monday for Tabletop Network. You were there for Tuesday, and I arrived just in time to join you for lunch with 5 people that I had never met, but you had gotten to know through the Tabletop Network. And I sat right across from a guy named Ricky Tada. And Ricky Tada was the designer of Coup, who I found out almost immediately. And I just looked him in the eye and I said, congratulations. I can never play your game.
Yeah, no, Ricky's he's designed Coup, and he's working on these actually I had a lot to talk to him about. He's working on interactive games involving multiple players and a video screen that he's trying to put together.
Very much what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, what he's doing is simpler, but it may be like more commercial, more accessible than the kind of big production foreign policy crisis stuff that I'm doing.
Well, yours is much more site specific, and his is trying to be more. Everybody can put their thing into that. I know that you're also trying to do that, but.
No, yeah, they're definitely different. But he was doing an interesting racehorse game where people were combining as teams in order to. You bet your money, you're pumping up horses, you're training riders or something. It was an interesting game he was working on.
Which is really...
he did not apologize at all for you being unable to play his game, if I remember.
No.
Correctly. No, yeah.
No. No, he said, why can't you play the game? I said, because everyone kills me first and then they play the rest of the game. And he said, yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah, I think what you're really talking about, though, is like you were able to come right in and jump right into... One of the things that's happening all the time at these, one of the main reasons you attend conferences like this is just the networking.
Yeah.
Meet a lot of people, and it doesn't mean like you're going to get a job, but you're expanding the community.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of what we're doing with the podcast here, but like I met, 24 people who exchange information with them and everybody's so different.
They are radically different people, but they all share a passion. It was so easy to have a conversation with every single one of these people because they all share a passion. They're eager to talk about the thing that they're developing. They're eager to hear your observations about gaming in general and what you like and why you like it. They're happy to opine and have a little back and forth. They can get theoretical. I had wonderful conversations with them. I really enjoyed my short stint, and you must have just been had a really great time.
Yeah, no, I will be back, and I'm definitely singing the praises of Tabletop Network. People should check it out. You can just go to Google Tabletop Network right now, and you'll see the kind of thing it was. And this is, Tim Fowers and Jeff Beck, I think, are the main organizers behind that. So they did a great job.
Who we got to go out to dinner with and hang out and spend some time with, and just fantastic people. Could not be more welcoming to new designers. Really loved it. We also brought our microphone with us, and we recorded a few interviews with some designers, 2 of which we're going to share with you. The first one we're going to share, I think we'll just get into it right now. We cornered Alan Moon. We cornered the creator of Ticket to Ride, basically an industry unto himself. He is also the founding partner, the man who created The Gathering of Friends. You may hear us talk about that on the podcast in the interview. The Gathering of Friends is this mythical conclave of Alan Moon and his 300 closest friends
right.
that descend upon Niagara Falls or Buffalo.
Of which we are not.
Of which we were not. We will see. Maybe we are now. It is something that everybody who's been in the hobby long enough tries to find a way to score an invite to, and it's a place where designers bring their prototypes and basically set up all kinds of new games that are just about ready to come out, and they put it before people that have been gaming for a very long time and know exactly what they're doing. Hardcore gamers that are way into it, that are able to give really good, dedicated feedback for those last moments before the game gets published.
Yeah, it's kind of an invite-only tabletop network before there was tabletop network, but
Precisely right.
yeah.
Well, without further ado, here is the interview with Alan Moon.
All right, this is Game Brain Podcast, and we are here with Alan Moon, the designer of Ticket to Ride. And
You start with Ticket to Ride. Start with Diamant. You start with Union Pacific. You start with the airlines. I mean, this San Marco. This guy has designed so many things, but he also designed one of the monsters of the industry. He designed Ticket to Ride and every game that came out from that.
what did Tom leave out there?
Quite a few, but it's probably he left out my favorites.
Which
one? My favorite game actually, I don't know. It changes a little bit sometimes, but I really loved the first card game I ever did, which was called Wer hat mehr, which was. It was later published by Rio Grande as Where's Bob's Hat?
Where's Bob's Hat?
I want to
Alan
play
Moon's
Where's Bob's Hat. All
My
right.
favorite game. It's sort of like because it's my first game. It sort of has the sentimental value. But
Sure.
yeah, you've been to Union Pacific though. And that's,
Oh, yes.
that's still a real favorite of mine. So.
Oh, it's a fantastic
What
game.
was the order? I don't know. So what was the order? Where does Union Pacific fit in compared to Ticket to Ride?
One of your early designs?
Yeah, Airlines was the original version, and then Union Pacific, and then Airlines Europe was that's the sequence of those, and then there's going to be a new one soon. So yeah.
So I think you mentioned, I'm remembering your talk from Tabletop Network, and you were talking about how your life's very good now, and it changed dramatically. I'm assuming that's with Ticket to Ride, or?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I always tell everybody when I won the award for Elfenland in 1998, that got me back to zero. I was heavily in debt, and just my life was a mess. So that kind of got me back to zero, got me to a position where I could work on lots of other games. I was mostly working as a waiter, and so in 2004, I was out being an independent game designer, not really working as a waiter, but I was at the point where I would have had to get a job again if Ticket to Ride hadn't won the award. So that really started, the second part of my life where things are, just financially secure, and it's just been different.
So was that your plan? Like you're working and you're doing board games. Was like board games like that's my ticket to ride out of my life right now, or what was the plan there, or just like advice to people that want to design board games?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it was the plan. I mean, I certainly wanted to be a game designer, but the problem is if you have to have another job, you're out there working, and when I was a waiter, I'd sometimes work 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and you come home, you don't really feel like designing games at that point, and so that's sad, so you're trying to work towards that. So I quit, being a waiter for a while to try and go full-time as a game designer, but it's hard. I mean, Rob Davio, gave a talk at TTN about, like, if you make $5,000 or $10,000 from a game, you've got to do, 10 to 12 games a year just to make a medium kind of living. And, that's tough. Now, there are more ways to make money today than there were 20 or 30 years ago because of the internet. I mean, so people like Friedemann Friese, he's got his own company. He makes a good living. He's not a millionaire, but he's making a good living. So it's a tough balance. If you're going to work and design games both, it's very tough. So I think you have to take that leap of faith and go and try and design games, but you need some success in the first couple of years or you're going to be in trouble.
So you're saying it was hard. It's hard to work while
it's hard.
You're working. You're working and you're trying to put board games together. But you did it though, didn't you? Like you found the time.
Yeah, I mean, the progression was that I started a company called White Wind that was an absolute disaster. It was a total failure until about 7 years later when Amigo bought the rights to Elfin Roads and I made it into Elfinland. That was the start of good things, but my plan with White Wind had been to publish limited editions and then sell them on to bigger companies. That didn't happen at all until 7 years later, when I had already closed down the company a few years before. So that was the original plan, and then the plan after that was, like I said, I got back to zero, and then I went back to work. I worked at Ravensburger and FX Schmidt, which was interesting because I got to see the other side of the table. I was the director of licensing and product development, so I was dealing with lots of designers, and that was really interesting. I'm glad I did that, and I probably would have stayed. I loved working at Ravensburger. I wanted to really go to Ravensburger, Germany and work, but I wasn't allowed to do that. So I just left again and took another leap of faith and said, okay, I'll try it again for a couple of years. And so I was right at that point where I would have to go back and get a job when Ticket to Ride won. So, yeah.
Okay, great. See, there was a whole, and it seems to me like whatever the path is that worked, like that path's already gone, or like it's changing every year. And you were mentioning different designers now that are kind of forming new paths, and it's kind of like you have to.
Yeah.
You can't just be reliant upon publishers to kind of. I mean, I think what's unsaid about a game a month is that nobody can do that.
Yeah,
It's not possible. You got to have the hit, or you got to be working for yourself in some way,
Yeah.
and even that might be
tough.
changing.
Yeah. No, it's tough, and plus, there were 1,200 new games at Essen. How are you possibly going to make yours stand out? How are the publishers going to make a game stand out anymore? It's just crazy. I don't understand. As a gamer, I don't even know where to start to look at possible games I might like. And what's happened really this year, I think, for the first time, is there's no buzz on anything from Essen. 1,200 new games, and there's no buzz. So I think what's going to happen is in 2 weeks, they're all going to be gone, and everybody's going to be looking forward to the Nuremberg games. And I think that's amazing. It's like, so the cult of the new is kind of like taken over completely in some ways, except for a few games that are able to stand outside that. But
So am I understanding you right? You're like, there's so many games that nothing in particular you feel like is standing out
I
right
really,
now.
Nobody's like, usually in a year there's 1 or 2 games that people are talking about. I'm not seeing that this year.
When we were at Essen 2 years ago, I think it was a similar thing. In 2017, there wasn't any particular one standout that really, really captured the imagination.
Despite the number of games, yeah.
Do you think that to some degree Kickstarter is to blame? I mean, Kickstarter has changed the equation.
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't
in
say
what
to
ways?
blame. I mean, I'm not sure Kickstarter is a bad thing. It's just that, everybody feels like they can do it. And so it just makes the path so easy. And I'm impressed all the time about how good the productions are. I don't know about the games because I don't get to play most of them, but the productions are great usually. So, I mean, they're obviously getting help because, like, if you're a regular person, you don't know how to produce a game like that. So obviously they're going to somebody who's helping them with that. And they're great. They look great. You walk around Gen Con, it's amazing. I walked around Gen Con, it's like, oh my God, look at all these games. They're great. And, but I don't know what they're like to play, and that's the problem is.
Well, your games were always very well produced. I mean, Union Pacific was a beautiful game. It had a gorgeous board to it. Ticket to Ride, the original Ticket to Ride with the train pieces, the gorgeous art on the cards. Your games seem to always have a real attention to detail in a way that Kickstarter has only kind of caught everybody else up to that. Before that, you would look at, when I look at my favorite Martin Wallace games, they could not be more stripped down, more basic, more, things thrown in a shoebox.
Yeah, but I think now, it's true. But I just look around. I think there's a lot of artists. Game designers have a lot in common with artists, the whole starving artist syndrome. And so that kind of, I always tell people, you don't want to be a starving artist. You want to be a successful game designer, Like it's fun to say, I'm just trying to make great games,
That's not fun.
That's not fun. 'Cause it might be fun for a few years, but after a while, it's a lot more fun to have money. So,
Alan, we have a lot of people on our that listen to us that are looking for what is that hidden game people don't talk about but is really, really great. Games other than games that you design.
Yeah, I never.
What would you say? Can you name anything that you wish more people knew about?
Yeah, I mean, the things I've enjoyed over the last few years, I just loved Pandemic Legacy. It was just, and I played with 3 lawyers, so and they were.
Why? Why did you do that?
Because one of them's my wife, and the other 2 are good friends, and all they did was try and cheat. It's like the 3 of them. I'm the only one trying to hold us to the rules. They go, well, we could just go back and do that over. I go, no, that was like 3 turns ago. We can't do that.
Especially in a cooperative game, right?
It was just amazingly fun, and we've been playing Machikura Legacy, which is a much simpler game, and so it's but it's still really fun. It's a nice social experience, so I really enjoy that type of game a lot. A lot of games I play once and then I don't play again, and not because they're bad games, but you feel like I just don't have the time to do that. And I'd rather play what are really, for me, my favorite games that are mostly pretty older games.
So what would be some of your favorite games that you want to play over
Yeah, I
and over
mean,
again?
the game I was on my all-time favorite was Descent: Journeys into the Dark, the first edition. And so, of course, nobody's making scenarios for it anymore. So you can't. We're going to wait a couple of years and then go back and play it again. But and that game sort of, it did everything for me that I would never think I would like. That we talked, argued about the rules all the time. It was long. It was just complicated. But I loved that game. When it was really good, it was an amazing experience, and I miss it. And the Descent 2 is not the same. They've simplified it, taken out the things that really make the first game great. One of them is the stamina points, where you can just use the fatigue points, where you can just use, and that was a big part of what made the game great. So
Yeah, but it seems like there's obviously a movement to kind of simplify and streamline a lot of older
which
games.
usually I'm in favor of. Yeah,
Right.
sure, but that one, I missed that game. I played hundreds of hours of that game, and it was awesome.
So it seemed like one of the things you talked about at Tabletop Network was branding
Yeah.
and advice to people about branding. So you are your brand, right? That's your message?
Yeah, well, I was trying to say that I don't think game companies do a good job of branding, and so I was trying to tell game designers that they have to make themselves the brand. And it's hard because game companies don't want to put game designers very prominently on the box.
Still, right. It's
Still,
kind of a
yeah.
bizarre thing, right?
Yeah, I talked about, when I worked at Parker Brothers, that I got interested in, why don't you put the game designers' names on the box? And they gave me all sorts of crazy reasons. And then one day a vice president said, we've never done it. And I thought, that's the dumbest reason of all. And I think other game companies have sort of continued that tradition by not featuring the game designer's name. And then I gave the comparison of books. Like if you go to a bookstore, it's all about James Patterson or John Sanford or whoever.
Yeah.
You don't know who the publisher is. Nobody cares who the publisher is. And so game designers, I feel, should have that. The game companies are missing the boat by America's all about celebrity and personality, and that's what they should try to feature. And so it's a slow build. You can't start from immediately expect somebody's name to mean something, but you have to give it a chance. And the other part of that is if you put the game designer on the box in a big way, it doesn't hurt the sales. Nobody's going to say, I'm not buying that game because he's on. But it might help down the road. And so, but they just don't understand that. They really don't.
Seems like one of my takeaways from Tabletop Network is you look at kind of a generation of younger designers now, and they've taken the kind of branding idea really to heart, and part of that is embracing social media.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it was, specifically I can think the kind of best example right now is Cole Worley.
Yeah.
Root is a brand.
Yeah.
That world, but you also have him doing on BGG, doing his designer diaries all the time, and I think any young designer, I think you expressed some frustration with social media, but if you're a young designer,
not really. I mean, it's just that I'm an old guy, so I don't use it that much. But it's great. I absolutely applaud them for doing that. I think they should do as much of that as they can.
Yeah, it's up to the designer.
Yeah.
Do not expect the publisher
No.
to take care of you, even in terms of the box or even the marketing your own game. You have to do that yourself. You have to be promoting yourself and getting yourself out on social media.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's great. You have huge opportunities with Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, it's huge. I'm not on Facebook because I just can't imagine how many people I'd have to be friends with, and it's just it's too much. It's too much stress, So, but I might actually do Twitter or Instagram at some point because my wife's really enjoying it too. So I don't know.
Last question, I think. We saw you talking to Jennifer Schlickburn, who's a good friend of ours. We've been playing games with her for a long time, and I guess we should announce it here. She's about to become the newest member of our Game Brain team. She's going to be one of our podcasters. She's been coming to Gathering of Friends, which is your event. Is that correct?
Yep, she came for a long time, and she hasn't been in the last few years. But yeah, she came for a long time, and
she has tortured us for years about the Gathering of Friends events. How do we get invited to your gathering?
That's the question you get all the time. Right?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. I usually don't get asked about that too much, but I've only been here for a few hours, and I've actually been asked quite a few times. No, you're not. You're number 6 already today. So it's usually I'm a little more low key than I'm sort of being this year. So I don't know. It's probably not a smart decision.
Well, okay. So for people that are listening, tell us what Gathering of Friends is.
The Gathering of Friends started out as just a weekend together with about 23 friends. 31 years ago, and today it's grown into about 450 people for 10 days, and it's almost all industry people, designers or companies. It's really become the best place to show prototypes. So you get to come, the company reps don't have any other agenda, so they can sit with you and play the whole game, go out to eat with you. So it's a great opportunity for designers, and the publishers like it too. A lot of big games have been discovered there, including Dominion, and really Matt Leacock, play tested Pandemic there, and lots of big games. Tom Lehman, any number of his games. So it's a really cool place. Now, despite what that I just said, that was never my intent or plan or anything. It just sort of happened. And I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, more designers and more game company reps started coming, and that brought more. And it was just, like I said, no intent at all. So now the gathering has become more of a responsibility to me than
Oh, I hope it's still fun for you.
It's fun in a different way. I mean, I love the social stuff, but yeah, it's different. I don't get to play a lot of games. I'm busy, negotiating with the hotel and taking care of all the hidden problems and stuff. So, yeah, but it's a fun thing. My wife wants me to go to year 50, so we'll see.
Oh, good. That's a good goal.
Well, Alan, we want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us, and we want to thank you especially for many, many, many years of great games. Thank you,
Thanks a
sir.
lot, guys.
All right, thank you.
All right.
And we're back. Let's get right into the meat of it. Let's get to Bgg.Con. We talked about what happened on Monday and Tuesday. Starting on Wednesday, we played games, and oh boy, did we play games. The rest of this podcast is basically going to be us giving our impressions of the games we played, and spoiler alert, we're going to do a full review of one of the games, of the game that we played the most at the con. That game was Crystal Palace. Hold on to your horses. We got a review for you. The very first game we sat down and played was Cooper Island. Let me give you some stats on Cooper Island. Cooper Island, 2019, virtually every game we talk about is going to be 2019. Andreas Odenthal was the designer, and the artist is Javier Gonzalez Cava. It plays 2 to 4 players in about 60 to 120 minutes. I think 120 minutes is a fairly decent call, and its weight currently is 4.13, so it's on the heavier side. Which I think fits with our impression of it. Trey, what would you have to say about Cooper Island?
I think I'm eager to play it again.
Mm-hmm.
We did not get a full playthrough of it. It seemed to have a lot of interesting things. It was definitely a multiplayer solitaire.
Yes,
game.
It is a game in which there is a central island, and around that island there are peninsulas, one per player, and you are developing your peninsula, while at the same time you have 2 ships that can move their way in opposite directions, one clockwise, one counterclockwise, down your peninsula and onto and visit the other peninsulas, and by doing so gain some of the benefits that the other players have had. That seems to be where the non-multiplayer co-op, that seems to be the only main interaction that there is with another player, which sounds like...
There's a little bit of interaction because it is kind of worker placement.
Yes.
In that there's action spaces, but you never get completely locked out, right? You just pay like one money,
correct,
in order to go to a space that someone has already taken.
Sure, which is less punitive, but money is quite tight in this game. So money is very, very, very tight. So that payment can sometimes be the difference between you being able to take that space and you not being able to take that space.
Tom, we didn't have like a specific list of games that we wanted, or at least I didn't, but of games that we wanted to play at Bgg.Con. But I think at least in our heads, we did.
Yeah,
and Cooper Island was one of them.
Way up there. It was, it was a game that was, we announced it before Essen. We talked about how it looks very, very interesting. Odenthal is a good designer. We like his games. We think he's a pretty darn good at game design. So we were eager to play it. It's no shock that it was the first game that we got out, because Matt's copy has not arrived yet. I did not order it. I didn't pre-order it. I just wasn't quite sure I wanted to yet.
Yeah, it had good buzz, and it probably has like the right amount of weight for, like, so that it seemed like it would be a good fit for our group. And it may still be. I'm eager to circle back around on and give it another shot. I'm not sure it's going to be exactly my thing, but it might be really perfect for some kind of players, right? I'm becoming more games I played at this convention, I became even more aware of how like the things I like in a game may not be the same things that the market is responding to, or even like the quote unquote heavier gamers that I associate with seem to like. So
agreed. Listen, we talked a lot about multiplayer solitaire last week. I do think that is one of the things that turns me off to a game to some degree. That said, it's not a deal breaker. It doesn't tell me that I'm not going to play this game because it is mostly multiplayer solitaire. It just has to be an exceptional game besides that point for me to be interested in it. I will say from one short play of Cooper Island, it may be one of those games that has enough going on.
There's some there, definitely.
There is definitely some there. Well, the most interesting thing about it is the three-dimensionality of it. When you're putting down tiles, you're not simply putting down tiles. When you put a tile down, you are creating two different land spaces, each of which generates one item.
Yeah, you're doing tile stacking. Tile stacking
Correct.
is a big aspect of this game, which is interesting.
You need to clear those items to be able to put a second layer on top of it. And when you do, that area now generates two of that particular resource. It is, I would say this, it is one of those things that it's a game that has an engine that can easily be jammed up. And jammed up in multiple ways. It can be jammed up in terms of I have items that are on my map that I need to have off my map so my map can grow. It also has a jam up in which, in order to take the items off of the map, I have to put them in my storage, and my storage is very limited.
Very limited, yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that our first play, there was some frustration with that, but maybe the good kind of frustration. Maybe that's the kind of frustration that can bear fruit when you start to get your arms around how to play the game. That may be a really satisfying puzzle to solve.
Yeah, the solitaire aspects of it might just still be really good, right? Yeah.
It certainly seemed,
but
deep
it certainly was, and it was hard.
Yes,
I was one of the people that got like the sand of the gears. There was plenty of sand in my gears because of the way that resources work in that game, and your very limited inventory supply. Where like I felt like I couldn't do anything, and it was certainly the result of poor play.
Right,
but that's okay, right?
I started off having no problems with that, but by the time the mid game started to emerge, I realized, I figured out how to keep things flowing, but I've made horrible mistakes in terms of what I've done and where I've placed things, and I have a very inefficient peninsula,
right?
Which is interesting. It's a very interesting.
Yeah,
thing.
I'm eager to return to it, and I think my kind of like core instinct as a gamer is to engine build and accumulate resources, and this has some mechanisms that will completely punish that. Like it's not just efficiency doesn't necessarily mean stockpiling resources. In this case, it means what you take in has to go right back out, or else your entire engine can clog. So anyway, a good game. We're eager to return to it.
Totally. Our second game was Crystal Palace. We're not going to say a word about Crystal Palace because we're going to give you the full-on review later. Suffice it to say, there's a reason we're giving you the review. We played this game and we were like, I can't wait to talk about this thing. And then the third thing, we came back after dinner with Tim Fowers, and Tim Fowers gave us Sabotage to play. That's his new game. Trey,
he didn't give us Sabotage. I wish he had given us Sabotage.
He'd given us Sabotage. He has.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's coming in. It's being shipped.
We played Sabotage.
Sabotage, I would say the closest analogy to it is what was the game? Captain Sonar meets Burgle Brothers.
Right.
Really.
Makes sense.
In a lot of ways. It is 2 versus 2, or it's best 2 versus 2. I guess you could play it 1 versus 1. 2 players are the spies, and they are infiltrating the evil mastermind's lair and headquarters, and they're trying to disarm the global destruction devices, of which there are 2 on the map. On both maps, you can see where the global destruction devices are, and you can see where the power generation device is as well. The other team are the 2 supervillains. The supervillains, their job is to find and murder the spies.
Prevent them from doing their spy-y things.
Correct. And the spy's job is to basically disarm the weapons, right? Disarm the weapons. If
So yes, it's kind of like a running multiplayer battleship game.
yes,
with progressing powers. You play a character that has a unique. Each person plays a unique character.
Yes.
That has kind of you're unlocking a tech tree of expanding powers that you like as the game continues. You are able to engage in more complex gameplay.
yes, you start off with basically 2 to 3 abilities that your character can engage, 2 or 3 things that you can do, but you also have a list of 6 things or 4 or 6 things at the top of your player board, and when you have accumulated enough little cubes through the gameplay, through doing certain things, you can unlock 1, 2, or eventually even 3 of these much more high caliber powers. For instance, the bad guys, we have the ability to stun you. We have stun guns, which shouldn't really be called stun guns because they kill you. But I have to guess exactly the square that you are in. I have to be right next to that square and hit you. Later on, one of the characters, because there are multiple characters that have multiple special abilities, one of the characters can bring out a flamethrower or an orbital laser, and in which case they can hit you from virtually anywhere. And the flamethrower hits multiple spaces, just as the basest of examples of the different things you can do. The spies have a lot of tech that will allow them to do scans and figure out where the bad guys are and what's going on the bad guys' side of the map without giving away their position, because most of the time the spies are going to have to move and scan, and whenever they move and scan, they're essentially giving away crucial information that gives the bad guys a pretty decent idea of where they might be.
Very much so. I often did not want to actually be doing my scanning because I felt like I was giving my position away. But I think this is a game also that would, despite it being kind of on the light to medium side in terms of heaviness, I think it will reward multiple plays because I think if I understood it better, I would have been able to be a much better spy. And so I'm looking forward to getting better at the game, which I think is a very good sign for the design.
Yes. Friend of the podcast, Mark Now. Strange enough, you hear Mark Now's voice almost every podcast.
Game night. No, that's not the wrong one. No, sorry. Which one is it? It's
this one.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North and South American. All the ships and clippers at sea. Let's go to press. Come on.
We knew that he recorded Game News. We had no idea that the singing at the end
actually him. Yeah.
is him. All of those voices are him. Mark, you blew us away. That's kind of amazing that you were able to do that. It's really neat. Mark designs LARPs with TREY and I for Gen.Con. We've been friends for years and years and years. Back when he was living in LA, he now lives in Austin. It came out for Wednesday through Sunday. We played a lot of games with him. Mark and I were the supervillains. TREY and a red shirt that we recruited were the spies.
right.
And the spies went down hard. And
We lost, and I used a number of clones. Let's just say that I used a number of clones in my game.
We said at the beginning of the game, we LARPed it, and the villain said, we are only going to kill TREY 3 times. We are going to kill other guy 2 times. And that's exactly what happened.
Which was their victory condition, so.
It was.
No, I'm eager to play this again. We'll probably do a full review.
Oh, I think
at some point.
Absolutely will. The long and short of it is a very fun game. It is very fun.
Yeah.
And unlike Captain Sonar, which TREY you won't play, it doesn't.
It's a good game. It's just not a good fit for me.
I totally agree. It is, but it doesn't have the real time element.
Mm-hmm.
It has more strategy. I think considerably more strategy than Captain Sonar has.
Yeah, and it's very social.
Yes, but which is to say, it's more of a gamer's game. I think Captain Sonar is more of a party game. In a lot of ways, or a light social game.
Even though Sabotage is probably lighter.
Is it though? I mean, it's not really, because you have to. You're making many more choices in a round.
Okay.
Right, you're making more decisions. It's Captain Sonar, because it's a real time game, and there's that constant time pressure. Essentially, if I'm the engineer, all I'm trying to do is clear off these systems so these systems work. If I'm the sonar guy,
Right.
all I'm trying to do is hear what the other guy's saying.
Right.
Right. Whereas in this game, every player is making very hard decisions all the time. How
Yeah,
am I
and
going to use
your success is going to be based upon how well you coordinate with your partner.
Correct.
And you and Mark coordinated very well.
We are wonderful Team Evil.
Yeah, and I may not have been the best partner in that
Look,
game.
I think don't beat yourself up. Mark and I were
That's your job.
Mark and I were just absolutely fantastic. We were.
It was a lot of fun.
Now is when we kill these spies. Kill these spies.
So put this on your list. We're going to do a full review in the upcoming weeks, but put this on your list of games to look at. See if this is the kind of thing that appeals to you. No pun included. Did a recent review of it, in which was a rave.
Yes,
review.
they loved
So if
it.
you want to find out more about Sabotage, go YouTube. No pun included. Review of that.
And speaking of Tim Fowers, we actually got to sit down with him and do a little interview. This will be the second interview of two that we give you for this podcast. We might even have some other interviews that we can give you in the future. But for today, sit back and listen to our short interview with Tim Fowers. We are here with game designer Tim Fowers. We just finished playing his brand new game, Sabotage. We've had an absolutely great time playing it, and we just want to do a little interview with Tim. We actually had dinner with him last night and just had a great time talking about all kinds of things game-related. Tim, how are you?
Hey, doing good.
Good. So what your newest game is Sabotage, but we know you from, we've talked many times on the pod about Burgle Brothers, we've talked about Paperback, we've talked about Fugitive, and now Boarding actually is one game we have not played of yours and has gotten rave reviews.
Yeah, I mostly just sell direct. I've been at it for, I've been full-time since 2015. And no, I'm just, doing my thing and glad that people like it.
So you've got a Kickstarter coming up soon too, right?
I just...
No, not Kickstarter. I'm sorry. Just tell us what the deal is with Burgle Brothers too.
So Burgle, 2 months ago, I had a Kickstarter for Burgle Bros 2, the Casino Capers set in Vegas.
Yeah.
And it's a remix of the original mechanics. It's weird to make a sequel of a board game. Like, there aren't a lot of 2s out there. So we had to kind of decide what that meant. But with kind of being a Ocean's 11 thing, we wanted to make a sequel. So we felt like we had enough new things to say with it that we did a sequel. So.
Well, a lot of your games are very cinematic. Burgle Brothers certainly is tremendously cinematic. Sabotage is very cinematic. And for those games, I think doing a sequel is a lot easier to do. I mean, I would say that Pandemic Legacy had a season 2 because it felt very much like that kind of experience.
Yeah.
And your games are even though very different, they're similar.
Yeah, they're doing television, I'm doing movies. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we also, after Burgle Bros hit such a vein, we really started to look at movies for inspiration of like, okay, this is a scaffolding of like an emotional framework. People understand the arc of a movie, what emotions it's going to produce. We have tropes to lean on, and so with Fugitive, now Boarding is, I guess, Catch Me If You Can. It's not necessarily cinematic, but then with Sabotage, it was very much, Bondian, but also like even just the vibe in Incredibles, sneaking into the base and the 50s retro. Yeah.
The artwork definitely suggests Incredibles. I was looking at it and I was like, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect for that kind of
volcano
tone.
base. Yeah.
So, Trey, do you want to talk about Tabletop Network?
Yeah. Tim, you founded Tabletop Network. Why don't you just explain to folks at home what it's all about?
We just felt there needed to be a kind of a seminar style conference for board game designers where you could actually listen. Board game designers love to get together, but they just play test.
Right.
So we're looking at other industries, like especially video game industry, things like GDC, Game Developers Conference, and like, okay, there's something missing here, and just professional development. And it turns out that there's like a big void for camaraderie. Like once we opened the doors and started doing, the talks are all useful, but just the camaraderie between designers and kind of establishing a positive kind of mentorship vibe, it was great. And so it's a 2-day conference of talks and workshops and some hands-on stuff. And we just finished it. We're a little exhausted, but I mean, it was good. And we had incredible people there, just incredible talks. Incredible
I mean, a ton of top designers giving like TED Talk style presentations over, all kinds of different topics. And then like one of the highlights at the end was the Shark Tank, where designers get to pitch their games. And this year,
To people like Martin Wallace,
Martin
who
Wallace.
is just staring at them like, what are you doing?
well, it would be better if he were just staring. But no, Martin Wallace had a lot to say.
Oh my gosh, Steve Bonacore, Martin Wallace, and then a representative from White Wizard and Ravensburger, and some were being Paula, some were being Simon Cowell. Like they were, but the format is just it's an elevator pitch. It's 3 minutes, and you're asking for just honesty, and it's touching and terrifying, and it's just a whole range of emotions.
And it's, even though it can be painful, it's clearly very helpful to people as far as both understanding what publishers want, but also just like how you have to be able to communicate about your game in 30 seconds. Plus, it was also half the time it was simply anyone would reject your game at this point because these things are not there. Whether it's like way too many components, the theme doesn't match the mechanics.
Yeah, blind spots. Like here are your blind spots, and I mean, it's not always in a nice way. But like
It was not always in a nice way, yes.
But but also like everyone wants to sign up and make a Kickstarter. And it's like everyone can do it. But this really brings home what it takes, not just with preparation, but also just like presence and pitching and all these like social skills, like that you think you might not think you need. So
Well, it's so hard because, as you said, game designers are very lonely people. They don't have a lot of, there's not a huge support network, and especially not a network of people that have produced games.
I'm not a lonely gamers. I'm not a lonely person. You're not
Every
a lonely person.
Every game designer I know is just a sad, lonely.
Tim, does this describe? This does not describe you either. I don't think.
They scare away all their friends because they've play tested them to death.
Maybe, but you've built a little bit of a community. Like you've started a business now.
Yeah, I have a studio, I think is the best way to say it. I have a couple of guys that each actually have their own brands, and we just kind of like help each other in like kind of feedback. But I don't really have employees per se.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
For everybody on the podcast, we've talked many times about the Italian Collective and how they come in and out of each other's games and help each other. Tim is doing that in Utah right now, and it's pretty exciting.
No, I'm jealous. You've built a community. I imagine it's very helpful for always getting feedback. You show up for work. Yeah. You're not just in your PJs or whatever. You go to work. You got to pay the rent. You're getting feedback. You're also I look to you as somebody who's like doing things differently. Like maybe the model of, hey, I'm going to make a game. I'm going to pitch it to publishers. They're gonna sign it, and then I'm going to make, 4 cents on the dollar on the thing. You're not doing it that way.
Well, yeah. So it's a lot of direct sales, but I'm also avoiding distribution, and it gets a little bit into the weeds of like how these models work. But basically, I'm kind of bucking the whole normal way of selling, and I'm just like, I'm going to sell direct to people. I mean, I am in some stores, so it's not like I'm not in stores, but if people know how stores get games, it's usually through distribution, and distribution lead to online retailers like Miniature Market and Cool Stuff Inc. and whatnot. But those guys doing heavy discounting undercuts the whole process. So now everyone's like, oh, I should always get 40% off on my games, and that really undermines the ability to live off this stuff. And so I've just been slow grow, direct sales, and by doing that, it's like I don't sell very many, but it's actually, I think, a more sustainable I don't have a big company to run, so I'm keeping my overhead low, but it's actually very sustainable in the long run, so I'm able to be full-time.
Well, the other thing is you have created a brand. Your games are not just, you're not just a self-published designer. You have a brand. Your games look and feel a certain way. Sure, paperback is a little bit different than now boarding. Now boarding is a little bit different than Sabotage, but they all feel like, it feels like when a new Tim Fowers game is coming out, we kind of have an idea of what it is. And I have to tell you, you're one of the few designers I know where you have not put out a bad game yet. There's not a game of yours. No.
Or maybe you haven't seen them. No.
But
Tim, do you have any bad games, Tim? Please answer the question. Do you have any bad games?
Yeah, I need a yes or no. Yes, I have bad games.
I don't. I own Burgle Brothers. I own Fugitive. I own Paperback.
I do. I throw a lot away. I mean, because, okay, the part of that whole distribution model is it's about velocity.
Right.
And so most people that even people that are doing kind of the self-publishing thing, once you go into distribution, to maintain the margins that you need, you have to do 3 or 4 games a year. Like,
wow.
Completed games in and out, right? So then you need the staff to do that, right?
Yep.
So, and so me, it's like I have to do 1 game a year. So I'll spend 3 months on a game, sometimes 6 months on a game, and it's just like, yes, there's a lot that were just not good enough, and it's and you have that sunk cost. It's really hard to walk away from because you're like, no, I can make it work. And so, yeah, I mean, we've got a graveyard.
You never played Flowchart.
Oh no, no Flowchart, man. That's like the ex-girlfriend that like is crazy, but you just keep, you keep going back to her. Like,
Sorry, I had to do it.
I mean, we could
it's so
talk.
bad.
We could talk about some screenplays that Trey wrote that hasn't seen the light of day.
And we're done here at Bgg.Con. Tim Fowers.
Tim, last question.
No, we're done here. Sorry.
We're always looking for what people think are hidden gems. So games that are not yours, that you love, that you really, really like, that maybe aren't the first thing people think of when they think of a great game. Because you play a lot of games as well as
not as much as I should.
Well, sure.
Yeah. Let's see. There's a new one called Die Crew from
I've been hearing about that.
It came out of Germany.
Today, yeah.
Well, I mean, still haven't played it, but a lot of really good. I've had several people tell me directly about it. Like hidden gems. I've been getting back into some of the old ones, like Innovation. Like it didn't get enough credit.
Carl Chuddick, fantastic game.
Yeah, but I mean, it kind of has kind of faded away, and it's like it's a really solid game. I mean, there are some modern classics that, with the velocity of everything, you're like, oh yeah, that was a good game, and the cult of the new just push you into the new stuff. And so I think finding a collection of like modern classics that haven't been, because very often you'll have like a Dominion and it grows into this whole genre, but then you have these little offshoots like that didn't go anywhere, but they were onto something. I think having some kind of like list or something of like modern classics would be interesting. So
we may have to put that together. That we've been talking internally about having an episode where we're talking about Christmas recommendations for every type of gamer, and going off that kind of thing. But actually starting to put together a list of instant classics. This month we were doing old school was the theme. So we were talking about a lot of older games and sort of separating which ones have aged very well and which ones haven't.
Yeah. And there's also, it's a moving target. People's sensibilities get heavier. Like as a community, we get heavier over time. It's just happened. And there's just different things. Like the funniest one is when you see like somebody comes to Tabletop Network or something, or they pop up and they're like, I've been working on this game for 10 years in my basement, and you're just like, sweet summer child, I'm so sorry you missed all the memos about how we've evolved as a community, and so you try to educate them. And I know your chess game has 3 players instead of 2, right? But we're just that's just not where we're at right now.
That's literally someone
we know exactly
the
that
4-player chess guy. Yeah, we know it.
Yeah.
It's not a.
Tim, thank you so much. We've had a really, really great time at the con with you.
Congratulations on Sabotage. It's a great game.
We're going to be reviewing it very, very soon. It's fantastic.
And so if people want your game, they should go to your website.
Fowers.games.
Fowers.games.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where you go to get Sabotage. Buy it directly from Tim. Yeah. That's the way to do it.
If you call the customer support number, it goes to me. So if you just want to talk.
If you want to talk to Tim,
And in
Customer
all
support at
seriousness,
Powers
in
Game.
all seriousness, we don't know of a bad Tim Fowers game. They're all really, really interesting and really fun.
Well, there is certainly is pressure, so I'll keep throwing games away. So.
There you go.
All right, thanks
so much.
Tim.
All right, bye.
And we're back. On Thursday, we began the day by playing Crystal Palace for a second time. Could not wait to get it to the table. And then after that, we played Expedition to Newdale. Expedition to Newdale is an Alexander Pfister joint. He is the designer. The artist is Clemens Franz. It
Yes.
is published by Lookout Games. And
Love him.
Trey, who is Clemens Franz for those who are uninitiated?
He does all of the artwork for my favorite games, especially Uwe Rosenberg.
Yes, he's the Agricola guy, isn't he?
He's the Agricola guy.
Yeah, he's the
He works
Ora
with
et
other
Labora
people
guy.
too, but he has an art style which may have defined the Euro board game over the last few years.
And it is Expedition to Newdale. That is a gorgeous game. No question about it. It is beautiful. It is fun to play. This is a game that is based on an earlier title of his called Oh My Goods. Oh My Goods is
This is in the Oh My Goods universe.
correct. Oh My Goods is a medium. It's a fairly small box, medium weight game from Alexander Pfister that didn't really. It wasn't something that was a big seller. It wasn't something that tons of people know about. It's not a Great Western Trail. It's not that kind of a game, but. And maybe because the title, Oh My Goods, with the exclamation point at the end of Oh My Goods, it sounds frivolous, but it's not. It's a good game. It's a really solid design.
Is that one of those ones that's like being translated from German in a weird way or something? Or
I think it might be. I think that they might have just come up with
it also
that.
like it's a card game. Like
Yes.
Oh My Goods is a card game, so it's designed to be like the weight of the game is appropriate to a card game. So it's a Euro in a card game form.
Sure.
And I think so. I think it did fine. I mean, I think it's done fine, but it's just like it's a card game, so people may not be thinking when I want my, Euro resourcey game, I'm going to get it out of a card game. But he's made Great Western Trail, Mombasa, Isle of Skye, Broom Service, Blackout Hong Kong. I mean,
Alexander Pfister is a rock star, and
Yeah.
he is on a roll. This is not the only game of his that's out this year. He also has Maracaibo out, so he's got a lot of stuff. And we've already done a little bit of we played a little Maracaibo, so we've got a first impression of that. We're going to save that for a later review. But Expedition
we'll
to Newdale
circle
is
back on
the-
that one for sure.
Yeah. Expedition to Newdale is the harder to find. I think there was only 1 or 2 copies at the entire Bgg.Con, so we were very, very lucky to play it. It is a good game. It is not. It is a card game, but it does have a board. You are moving your pieces around the board to different cities and towns. You have a victory condition that is asking you to get to these particular cities to score a lot of points. You start with 1 card in front of you, and that card is a coal mine. And each round, that coal mine is going to generate a certain amount of coal. You can then get later cards, and when you get these cards are going to generate other resources, or they're going to take that coal and turn that coal into something else. They're going to be able to use that. And basically the idea is coal is worth 1 point each. What would you say? Let's pick another resource.
I mean, there's a whole tech tree of the resources, right?
Yes.
So you may start with coal, but then you're collecting grain, and you can make bread with that. I mean, it's some stuff that's pretty familiar to like certain Euro
Precisely right.
tropes.
And some of those are worth 2, and then there were 3. I had an abattoir that could turn cows and turn them into 4 points
Right.
each worth of elements.
So you're both kind of like exploring a map, expanding across a map, but you're also playing your own card game. You're not deck building, but you have card economy in this
Yes.
game in a way that was very familiar to me from playing games like Netrunner or Game of Thrones LCG or even Magic, because you have a hand of cards that act both as the source for the cards that you're going to play down. They're going to give you certain powers. Like it makes sense. Your abattoir is going to convert your cattle into meat, and the meat's going to be worth more, right?
Right.
You know,
And the ones that are worth the most points they require two different goods sometimes in order to make one of the really valuable good, and sometimes
Right,
those
like you have to build your own economy
Correct.
on your board with these kind of permanent cards, but you form them by playing them from your hand, but the resources in your hand actually are resources too.
Yes.
So you can convert your card draw into resources that pay out more, and managing your hand is a big part of the game. In a way that was really interesting. It feels like playing the game. It's a board game that often feels more like a card game to me.
Yes.
It's a little multiplayer solitaire also.
It is quite multiplayer solitaire.
And
it does have worker placement.
Mm-hmm.
You are placing those workers sometimes into common areas,
Yep.
but there is no blocking. So I would say that generally when there's worker placement with no blocking, I'd no longer consider that a worker placement. I consider that
Right.
more action selection.
Right.
And this definitely has that. There is really almost nothing that you do that impacts anybody else's choices.
This game also had something which I think we're seeing more of in games, and I don't know what the right mechanism word for this is, but I'm going to call it like a chronicle aspect, which
Yes.
is that the game, like there are multiple versions of this game that you play out of the box. You can work through the chapters, and it's a way of kind of teaching the game as you play it, and you can get to more complicated gameplay as you progress through these scenarios that you play. Some of them I think are probably just ways of playing the game differently, but like you're not ready for some of the more advanced scenarios when you first start playing the game, and the game teaches you
Correct.
as you go.
And they each tell a story. The story does evolve to some degree. It's not hugely a storytelling game.
It's certainly not a story you're going to take seriously.
No, but each game takes about 90 minutes. When you add up all of the different chapters that come just in the box, it's around 12 hours of gameplay. So that's a lot. That's I think 6 different chapters are in the game on the whole. And looking at the various bags that had the pieces for chapter 5 and things like that, some of them are quite different and really probably throw a wrench in everything you come to expect for the game, which for a medium weight game, I think that's a really good choice. Because medium weight games, especially things that are engine optimization, which essentially is what this is, a medium weight engine optimization game may not have that many plays for me, right? Eventually I may get tired of it. But if there are all these different scenarios that play quite differently.
Well, it wasn't, and some of the scenarios required a different map, right? Like there were additional boards in the box.
There's a water map that's for there's a fishing or water-based episode, I think episode 5 or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
They look quite interesting.
I'm eager to play that game again.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. As well. And then the last game we played on Thursday was The Magnificent. The Magnificent was number 1 at Essen in the Board Game Geek Buzz. So we were very eager to get that to the table. It is a gorgeous looking game. It is a very dark board. It's kind of dark.
Kind of what in Nightmare Circus land here a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Carnival land.
I guess that's true. I think Art Deco is the is the design scheme of it. We're carnies, circus folk, very small hands. We are basically trying to put together the best carnival that we can. We're going to use a common pool of dice that is going to be rolled. The dice have, obviously you have different numbers on them, but they also have different colors.
Common pool for all players.
Common pool for all players.
We then draft.
Which makes it not multiplayer solitaire.
Mm-hmm.
When you take a die, you're going to be able to use that die to
There's also action spaces, right?
Yes.
Well, we're not restricted. Yeah, we're not restricted in how we place our assistants in that, right?
No.
We're not competing to grab any of those. Okay,
No.
so yeah. So not really.
No, not in that sense.
But we are competing for the dice.
Correct. And when you take a die, you can use that die value to do one of 3 things. You're going to use it to construct tents. And the color of the tent, there are 3 colors of tents, and each tent has 2 sizes, one that takes up 4 spaces and one that takes up 6 spaces. And you have your own fair map that's right in front of you, fairground. as you use it, you're going to be covering up various resources that you then gain. Things like an extra assistant or tickets, which are victory points in the game. The person who sells the most tickets wins the game. Money, which is surprisingly tight because you have to pay for the dice that you use, which is a mechanic that we're going to come back to when we talk about Crystal Palace. So one of the things you can do in the game is you can build your tents. Building tents is very important because and a second thing you can do is you can travel. When you travel, you're going to be moving the caravan of the color of your die around a circular map, and when you cross a crystal, you're going to get one of those crystals. Crystals add 2 to the value of that color die, so that die becomes
Crystals,
more...
yeah, they're a kind of currency that you're going to spend in a bunch of different ways.
Correct.
In the game.
Going back to the tents, if you have a 5 die and you get to use that, a 5 die will allow you to build maybe one small tent. But if that die value gets up to 9, suddenly you can build a small and a large tent. So the higher the value, the greater the ability that you unlock. And when you recruit a second die of the same color, they are additive. So you're going to add in the value together. But that is going to become more and more expensive. The third thing you can do is you can put on shows. That's the perform action. And when you do the perform action, there are perform cards that you're going to be drafting throughout the game, and they will require certain things to be done. First of all, they will require a certain combination of tents to be be in your set. And sometimes they will also require you to sacrifice crystals.
Yep.
In order to be able to perform that, and then you will gain victory points based on the performances that you're able to pull off. It's a solid game.
This game had 2 things going against it in TREY's book of preferences. One, it has a polyominoes aspect. The Tetris-y thing.
TREY don't like Tetris,
right? I generally don't. That's not necessarily fun for me. It's fun for a lot of people. It also had kind of a combination of abstractness to it in terms of like the wheels and getting the crystals, and kind of a opaque symbology that I tend to find inaccessible. Like, to me, Trismegistus is the ultimate example of this, of like a lot of symbols, and it's hard to kind of figure out what anything means or why I should care about any of it. Despite that, I found myself really liking this game.
Yeah.
So like, it's not in my wheelhouse, but I still liked it. I think this game, it doesn't look anything like a Uwe Rosenberg game. I think but it is using a lot of kind of like the foundation that he did with Polyomino.
Yes.
Both in Patchwork and even, playing, we've played
Feast for Odin or...
Yeah, like this is certainly something set up in like Caverna, where you place your polyomino over something, you get a reward for covering things.
Yes,
like this is embracing that and taking it to another level that does make it feel really different. It doesn't feel like an Uwe Rosenberg game, but I think there's a lot of underlying mechanics to what's going on there.
And listen, it is not a heavy game. Its weight currently is 3.13, so middlebrow, like not hard to teach, not hard to play. It isn't incredibly complex. It plays in 60 to 90 minutes, so it is not a very long game either. So if you have a group that likes that medium weight slot, that's what you like. You're not into the super heavy stuff. This is a medium game that is very well constructed. I think that it gives you a lot of bang for the 1 hour playtime buck.
Yeah, it has a similar thing to Coimbra also. You're grabbing the dice that become yours that you then place there. We had a number of moments in the game that I tend to think these are good moments in games of, you just took the die I wanted.
Yes.
Like
makes it not multiplayer solitaire.
We're racing for certain dice, and we even had you took the act I wanted. Because there's only a certain number of acts out there, and they require a certain combination of tents, and you're trying to build your own portfolio of games on your own board that's going to make for this spectacular final performance that works with all the different kind of tents you have. And so a lot of times you're eyeing one's going to come up that's like, I know that's going to be a big score for me. And then, but you didn't, someone else takes it right in front of you.
Yeah, I agree with every single one of those
Will that
points.
tent still be there? I need to take this other action first. Will that tent still be there when I want to take it? I tend to feel like those are good things. When as you understand the game more, you're having to think of more things going into each move you make, and so it's less rote and more I'm juggling a number of different concerns when I make my move.
We found that we played a rule wrong in terms of the cost of the dice.
Shocking.
Well, listen, we played a ton of games,
Well,
and we
let's
had
talk
to
about
learn.
that. This is BGG, unlike almost any other con I've been, has almost a culture of people grabbing a game out of the library, going to a table, taking out the rules, and reading them and learning them at the table.
Yes.
Which tends to be something that I hate.
Yes.
But that is the culture of Bgg.Con, and we had to do it a number of times.
I have never sped read more rule sets.
It's hard.
Over the course of 4 days.
It's really hard.
How many of these games did I end up trying to teach? It was having literally read the rules 10 minutes before, or 2 minutes before.
Thank God I was with you and Mark, because you're a good team, because like you had to speed read and give us the initial read, and then sometimes I would be like, that doesn't sound right, whereas Mark would go, the next step would be like, I know that's not right, and he would start reading. Like we would get the real rules halfway into the game.
I'll do the teach and the overview and tell you a story of how to play this game thematically, and it'll be 80% right. And then Mark will go in with the second draft, and he will be like, no, it's
generally
not
after
quite
turn
that.
3.
Right. No, it's not that. It's this, and it's this because of this, and then this is why this thing makes sense now. And then,
okay, yeah, that's better. That's better than way you taught it, Tom. That happened a number of times, but right, you did a great job considering that was the situation. I'm completely spoiled, and that I tend to walk into either Matt's game night or your game night, and somebody's already played this game, or if you're Matt, you're like, this is the thing you love to do, is to read the rules, watch it played on YouTube, play it solo yourself first, and then teach people. And I appreciate that as a player.
Matt and I are always ready to teach a new game, and we study it beforehand. Yeah, we love it.
I like teaching games I have played before and have been taught to me, like starting from the rule book.
Yes.
I just think it's very, very hard, and life is short, so why do it?
Anyway, that was the Magnificent. I would say that for me personally, I tend to like harder core, heavier games than what the Magnificent is. But if you are not, if the Vitalacertas of the world are probably not quite your jam, I think Magnificent is a fantastic midweight game.
It's a good game. We'll probably do a review of it at some point, but it should be on people's list to check out, see if it's your thing.
Let's get to Friday. Friday, we began the day by playing one of the games we were most looking forward to. We played Marco Polo 2. Do we need to say? Simone Luciani and Danielle Tascini were the designers. The artist was Dennis Lohausen, the same designer as the first one. Marco Polo 2, In Service of the Con. Good points. It felt like I was playing Marco Polo.
Yep.
It was very different, though.
It was looser.
It was looser. A Marco Polo can feel very punitive. It feels very, very hard to do almost anything you want to do. Movement is so painful to...
I can't do the thing I want to do, and I'm sitting in one spot sometimes.
Yes. And there is there are two strategies. There's the move around and pop all over the board, and there is the complete contracts. And some people
just play the worker placement game.
Some people have found that you can never leave Venice.
You don't have to.
And complete a whole bunch of contracts and almost win the game. And to some, that might be a little bit of a flaw in the original Marco Polo.
Clearly the designer thought it was.
A little bit. So in this game now, movement becomes much easier. There are actually 3 different movement spaces that you can choose between. One that costs 2 coins, but you can only move 1 space. One that costs 2 dice, and you can move up to 3 spaces, and one that costs 3 dice, and you can move all the way up to 6 spaces. And there is the costs for movement are now all on the board. There are a lot of costs on the board. The costs in money, the costs in in camels, and a new cost being you have to pick up guild tokens to take certain routes. And
Did you mention like Jade is a new,
cross those routes.
new resource? In the game?
No, I didn't. There is a resource called Jade, which is kind of like a master resource that you can always
It's highly
exchange,
flexible.
that you can exchange for
Again,
almost anything.
going to the whole loose, the tightness of the first game, Jade is kind of like your super resource that you can use in a lot of different ways to enable you to do the things you want to do.
If you think rubies in Caverna,
Yeah.
then that's pretty much what Jade is in this game. But interestingly, if you want to play the contract game, and the contract game is still one of the two ways you are going to score a lot of points, the contracts are no longer at the bottom of the board ready to be taken by anyone sitting
Just
anywhere.
sitting in Venice.
You must go out and you must occupy cities. You must put your trading posts into cities.
The cities become the markets for you.
Yes, the cities are the places where there are the contracts. And the more cities with contracts you get to, the higher a variety that you can choose from to put together your contracts. I like this very much. I think that this is a very good development in the game, even if I kind of miss how tight the game was. I feel like this game may be too forgiving for my own particular tastes. That said, I like very much the idea that you have to go out and achieve certain locations, reach certain locations in order to be able to start to focus on your trading game, on your contract fulfillment game.
I liked it better. It was an improvement in terms of what I like, because I felt like the first one, you kind of really understood the game well, and you linked all your moves together, and you could have these amazing, turns with a lot of things happened, or you didn't, and that was there was a pretty big gap between being able to do what you want and you didn't want to do, and this just smooths all of that out. And I think you could entirely play this game and come in last, and you still felt like you did a lot of really interesting things and played your own game, and that can be a pleasant experience. Whereas I think when you got your butt kicked in Marco Polo the first game, you'd have a higher frustration factor and felt like, I watched everyone else do these amazing things, and I don't know. I may not even understand why my game wasn't like that.
Which is exactly why I prefer the original Marco Polo.
Because that's who Tom is. So one thing that is interesting, setting the scene at Bgg.Con here, is we spent a lot of time in the hot games room.
Hot games coming in.
This is a very small corner of the actual con in terms of like the number of people who are in there compared to the giant football field
ballroom.
Ballroom
is the size of a football field. Really is. It's massive, and it is full to capacity. You were looking around. I think it was the perfect size for what the con was, because it was one of these things where you would walk in at full capacity and you'd be like, I don't think there's a table here. But if you look around, you will find that there was always at least a table available to you, and very rarely many more.
Yeah, you could always find a table and players and someone to teach you a game in the ballroom. We spent a lot of time in hot games, which was about 40 tables, would you say, like in that room?
Let's see. I would say 5 times. I think it's probably closer to 28, 30.
Okay.
Something like that.
Small room. We spent a lot of time there.
We basically camped there. And it was
because that's where a lot of the stuff from Essen that's not available in the United States yet. That's where it was. Not everything fell into that category. Like Tapestry was in there.
Yeah, there were a few games that were.
Now, the interesting thing, or the thing I was going to say, was it was interesting to see what games were the hardest to actually get plays in.
Yes,
like we were dying to replay Crystal Palace. We'll get to that. We had trouble playing Crystal Palace. Like we had to queue up a lot of time to play it multiple times.
Taverns of Tiefenthal was a hard get too as well.
I mean, people were playing the hell out of Tapestry. But Marco Polo 2 wasn't that hard of a game to do, I didn't think.
No, it was not one of the harder ones.
It's a little bit of a head scratcher for me.
Glenmore 2, I think, were the two of the games that would seem to always have a seat available.
There was just the one table of On Mars, which
was constantly full.
Especially because it's a long game with a tough teach.
Yeah, and you really had we did what we needed to do for our listeners. We posted up in that room all the time. We're boxing people out. I'm standing right next to the game that I want to play, and I'm like, they're on turn 4 or 5. Okay, just stand right there, smile at them. If they talk to you, just talk to them and see if you can reserve that next.
Yeah, you're sometimes trying to get people to hand the game off to you when you're done.
Just mad dogging people as they come by, trying to stand next to the same table you're
keep
standing
walking.
next to.
Keep walking, punk.
Keep going. By the way, we're wearing our Game Brain shirts the entire weekend, so
we're very intimidating.
Any negative behavior that we have is just totally going to come back to the podcast.
It's our baby move.
Even to the point of finding out exactly what time the Hot Games room opens, getting there 10 minutes before it opens, and getting in line to race to the game that we want to play next. So that was the majority of our conference in that room. We played some games in the main room. We did some other things as well.
Sure,
but there were too many great things that we were dying to try that were in the Hot Games room.
My point in bringing it up is only just that I was surprised that Marco Polo 2 that people weren't queuing up for it. And so I don't know what that means, but it's a little surprising to me. But it may also be indicative of like the kinds of games that we want to play may not be completely representative of the Bgg.Con overall gamer
fair enough
makeup.
It could be. Let's talk about a couple of negative things about Marco Polo 2. One of the things I love to death about the original Marco Polo is the characters. You teach the game. It's probably my favorite game to teach, because I teach the game and everybody feels like, okay, I kind of get it. I think I can play. And then I say, wait. We have these characters, and I'm going to go through these characters, and you're going to choose one of these, and they're going to have a special game-breaking power. And then I always teach it with I teach them in groups. I have the first group that I teach you that people are like, whoa, those are great powers. That's amazing. Wow. And then I go to the second set and they're like, you got to be kidding me. No, I thought those first powers were great. These powers are crazy. And then at the end, you get to the guy that he can choose whatever number on whatever die he wants for the entire game. And they're like, how on earth can these possibly be balanced? And they are. They're amazing. The characters in Marco Polo 2, I do not feel so far. Listen, this is not a review.
You want them to be super broken?
I want them to be cooler. I did not feel that they were that cool. I did not feel that they were that special. And to make matters worse, they say something. There's like a paragraph at the end of the rules that says, hey, if you want to mix the games and bring the characters from the other one, bring them. With there's no guidelines. There's no
like a throw in.
They just throw that in. And it was one of those things that I thought about. I thought about it. I'm like, okay, which characters would I bring over and how would they play? And I realized, you can't bring Mercator over because there is no market. Right? You can't do that. The Wilhelm, the guy who drops trading posts behind him no matter how far he moves. Well, guess what? One of the
now there's an action space.
There's an action space where you can drop a second guy, so he becomes much less useful.
We have an action space for that. It's the Elizabeth Warren of board games. I experienced something a little bit differently. I liked the character I played, and especially because it gave me some direction on a first play. Like it was clear which way to go. And I did have that moment that, that's broken. And that came to the character that Mark was playing, where I had misunderstood exactly what it was at the first. And then once he actually started playing it, I was like, that is broken. That's crazy what his power is. So to me, that felt like the first game. And I felt like you the power you took, I almost felt like you were taking something that was a little boring.
That could be
to balance things out, because you were clearly the most experienced Marco Polo player. At the table, you took something that was just kind of like an efficiency character.
It was a vanilla guy.
Yeah,
it was a much more vanilla guy, and maybe that's just my reaction to it. Is that I didn't really like playing that guy. He wasn't interesting, but I think I knew going into it that he probably wasn't. So it's probably an unfair statement.
We're gonna get some more plays in that. See how you feel.
Big time. I'm looking forward to that. Next, we played Taverns of Tiefenthal. Taverns of Tiefenthal is a light game. It is not. It's just not a very heavy game. I think the weight currently is 2.65. So
that's way too high.
It plays in 60 minutes. 2 to 4 players. Wolfgang Warsch. Hey, what can you say about Wolfgang Warsch? He is everything that he has done has turned to gold recently. So Quacks of Quedlinburg. The Mind, I mean, the guy is just on an absolute roll, and this is no exception. This is a fun game. I really, really enjoyed playing this game. Everybody starts with a junky little tavern. And the tavern has a
tavern full of deadbeats.
Deadbeats, and there's a dog that is just sitting there that's not doing anything. You have a single waitress who isn't particularly good at her job. You have a money pouch that you collect your money in. You got one barback who's trying to help ferry beer to the customers. And over the course of the game, you're going to be collecting two different types of income. You're going to be collecting money from the patrons, and you're going to be making beer. And you're going to be able to purchase better cards. So
you can improve your tavern, and you can improve the people who visit your tavern.
Yes. So much like Dominion, what you're doing is you're looking at a market that has a variety of choices of things. You can buy another waitress, and waitresses give you extra dice that you can roll, which gives you more options. You can get beer seller guys that get you more and more beer. And on the other side,
it's your beer multiplier.
Yeah. And you can get fancy patrons that will tip a lot better. And pay you and pay you a lot more. Now, interestingly enough, all of these characters that you shuffle into your deck, when you deal out, you're going to keep dealing your deck out until all the tables in your establishment are full. Dishwashers, barbacks, waitresses, they don't take a table space. It's only the patrons that take the table space. So sometimes you're dealing out 6, 7, 8, 9 cards, and you're getting a big, massive turn where you have actually a lot of options and a lot of things to do. But each one of these characters requires a die to activate them. And they have very different numbers. So to get your beer production up, it tends to be 1s or 6s, but never both that you use for those things.
Yeah, there's a die drafting aspect of this game too,
which is cool, because what happens is there's each person has 4 white dice and 3 dice of their color. The dice of your color only come out if you have a waitress in play.
Yeah, it's a special.
Correct.
Right.
But with the 4 regular dice, you're going to roll those 4 dice, you're going to put them on your little coaster, and you're going to choose one of those dice, and then you pass 3 to the person on your left. You get 3 from the person on your left, and you choose the next one. So think Seven Wonders with dice. And it's a good mechanic. It's really simple. It's really easy to understand. But the thing we like about the game the most, or the thing I like about the game the most, is that your player board is a puzzle piece. It has several different puzzle piece parts to it that you can pull out and flip over to the opposite side for a cost. For $9, you can turn the dishwashing station into a dishwasher who is working hard to make things better. You can turn your junky little beer cellar into a full-on distillery or whatever you would call that.
You can convert
a brewery,
the dog in the corner into a permanent waitress.
Correct.
I don't know if that's offensive or not. It's weird.
You just hired a waitress. You
got rid of the dog.
You haven't magically transformed her, and
Okay.
The change purse you can turn into a full-on cash register. So
yeah, what Tom's talking about, this game's table presence table appeal is incredibly high.
Yes.
This is like wingspan level of table presence, tail to walking level, or higher even.
Yes. Wonderfully thematic. It plays
it's very cool to be able to see your tavern, the way it looks, transform over the course of the game.
And we own a copy of this, so we will be doing a full review later, but just suffice it to say that there may not be a lot of meat on the bones, but the theme is so much fun that every ounce of
it's definitely fun when the dice go your way. There's a lot of die rolling. It's that kind of game, so it's not going to be my kind of thing.
Yes.
And you can definitely whiff.
Oh yeah,
like you can whiff hard in this game, and you can be watching everyone else's beautiful taverns being converted while you got this expensive patron, and then you couldn't hit the die that was going to give you the 5 gold that was going to make the huge difference to buy the thing.
Also, like Dominion, the big point scorers are the nobles, and you can get the nobles to come to your place. The problem is that the nobles score a lot of points for you, but they're really bad tippers.
Yeah,
which is exactly like getting
the way it gums
scoring
up your
cards,
hands
the scoring cards in Dominion.
Yeah, so it's a little less punitive because it tends to happen all at the end.
It tends to be more of it at the end, that's for sure.
So it's not trying to actively frustrate you the way that Dominion kind of did. I think this is a really cool game. I suspect this will be a pretty big hit. It's not my kind of game.
I want to play with the advanced cards. We only played the basic vanilla version of it. I would very much like to play with those cards, and I hope that Wolfgang Warsch comes out with a gamer's game set of cards for it, because I think this is the kind of game that if you had more card variety, if you had more variety in general, there's a lot of strategic depth that this game could get to that the basic game just hasn't yet. But once again, we only played the basic version, and it does come with some advanced rules and some advanced card sets, so we're looking forward to checking that out. Last thing on Friday, I had a game that I played with Mark while Trey was off doing other things. It's a Wonderful World. Also got a very high review at Essen. It was very well regarded. I will tell you that it is a game in which basically it is Seven Wonders. It's kind of Seven Wonders. You're drafting cards. You are choosing the cards that you are going to discard. And when you discard a card, you get basically one resource per card. And there are 6 different colors of resources. There's the white resources are the lowest value resource, then the black, then all the way up to the gold resources, and eventually the red resources, which you can't even get. The idea being that when you discard a card, you get the recycle value of that card, which is just one resource. Or you play the card to your tableau in the construction section, and that essentially is a place where you are building that card. And that card shows you in the upper left what it's going to require. It's going to require 3 whites and a black. It's going to require 2 greens and a yellow in order to build. And when you've successfully built them, you get the victory points on that card. You get the benefit of that card. Sometimes they give you a windfall of resources for your game. So very much Seven Wonders. At the end of the game, I ended up saying to myself, why would I play this instead of Seven Wonders? There's a couple things that it does that are better. It's less rules heavy than Seven Wonders. It's a lot cleaner in the sense that the points that there is no science category. The points that you're getting are on the card. The resources that you get in addition to that, there's the capitalist and the generals, and you win those by collecting the most of each color resource. You are going to win that category of resource, and each one gives you either a general or a capitalist for as a reward, and each one of those are worth a victory point. Some cards will give you more victory points for having one type or the other. At the end of the day, I decided that I don't really like the game that much. I think it's fine, but I would much rather play Seven Wonders. There's no itch that it scratches that Seven Wonders doesn't do better.
Okay.
Saturday began with On Mars. We got there at 7:50 in the morning to jump into that room.
You did. You got there 7:50.
I got there at 7:50.
I was there at 8:02.
You were there at 8:02. Mark was there at 8:04. And much shame was dealt out to him for that. I
really tried to get there at 8. I really.
Well,
at this point in the con,
did you really get there at 8:02, or did you not get there at 8:02?
I was physically present.
Your body was there at 8:02.
Yeah, this was the point. This was Saturday morning, so I've been here since Sunday night, and I think this was the point where the toll of the con was having an effect upon me, and I had not slept well the night before, and so it's time to play On Mars by Vito Lacerda.
The hardest, most baroque game. I had watched a playthrough, and I had read the rules, so I had done both of those before we sat down, because it's a Vito Lacerda game. You're not going to be able to just start reading the rules and explain it and understand it.
There's so many times you sit down and you kind of say, let's just start playing, and we'll kind of figure it out as we go.
That's not this guy.
That's not going to work.
That's not this guy. So we sat down and we started going, and this is on the Baroque side of Vito Lacerda. Some of his designs are easier to grok. I think the Gallerist is not that hard a game to understand. I think Lisboa is trickier. I think Lisboa is
Yep.
a little more opaque, a little harder to really see how all of these gears intertwine. I would say that on Mars,
None of his games are an easy teach.
No.
But there's certainly layers here of difficulty.
but on Mars was particularly tricky. It was difficult. And by the way, it could be that it's Saturday morning. We've been learning games. We've been, our brains are fried as much as they can be.
Certainly mine was.
But the essential idea of On Mars is that we are building Mars settlements. This is not terraforming Mars. This is a game in which we are just starting out. We are just arriving to Mars, and we are trying to establish settlements and build.
In fact, getting down to the planet and back up to orbit is a part of the game.
It is indeed. There are two sides to the board. Two halves of the board: the left half and the right half. The left half are the orbital actions, which you can do at the space station. These are things like downloading blueprints sent from Earth. These are getting resources from the stockpile. Basically, transport ships are coming and flying in these resources that you're then going to take down to the planet and you're going to use. Then there are the actions that happen on the planet side. Those are things like building structures and improving structures that you've built, moving your rovers and moving your robots. Robots are used to construct things, and rovers are used to explore and unlock exploration tiles that are out there, and to suck up these crystals that a lot of construction will unearth and reveal, that are very valuable sort of wildcard resources that can be used for a wide variety of things. There is, at the end of every round, basically everybody takes one action, and then there's a shuttle round. And in the early game, every single shuttle round, the shuttle moves either from Mars to space or from space to Mars. You can hop on and hitch a ride for free down there during a shuttle round. If you are out of position and you can't take the shuttle, there are actions which will allow you at some price to be able to transform yourself from one side of the board to the other side of the board. Otherwise, are you lost yet? Because we were.
Yeah. Certainly one of us more so than others. There's probably a point where you're traveling to Mars where you kind of make the turn, like you get caught by the gravity, or you just continue out into space.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think I failed to kind of make my orbit
you missed
that morning.
You missed the window.
Yeah.
You missed the window.
So we'll circle back to this at a later date, because this is one of my favorite designers, and I'm really interested in learning how to play this game. It did not happen on that morning for me, though.
Trey pulled the ripcord. He went back to the room to go back to sleep. There were people that were cleaning the room at the time, and he said, "Come back later." And they said, "No, we can't. Your room is too disgusting."
That's not what they said, but it's effectively what they said.
They said you can't. So he went down to the lobby to wait until the room was clean and fell asleep in the lobby of the hotel.
I did not fall. I was nodding off. At no point did I sleep in the lobby, but if I was feeling like I'm feeling kind of tired and I can't really understand this, it's because I was really tired. And people have gone to conventions. You've experienced this before, where you're running on adrenaline for a long time, and it's fun.
Oh yeah,
and that's fine. And sometimes you get sick, but then other times you're completely on empty, and that's where I was that morning.
That said, Mark and I did play on Mars, and I got to tell you, I really enjoyed it. It is a bear to learn, and it is very, very opaque in terms of figuring out, okay, I'm doing this action, and this action helps me incrementally do this other thing, and I have to figure out what is the sequence of things to do. And it's only, maybe a great rules explanation will get that to you, but there's so many rules. There's so much overhead.
It's going to be
understand what's
worth
going
the
on.
Study, probably.
I believe that the juice is going to be totally worth the squeeze, because it is a very thematic, very, very interesting game with very complex interlocking mechanisms.
And this may be his heaviest game. So that'd be your guess right now?
So far, I think it is. Currently on Board Game Geek, it's got a rating of 4.41 out of 5, which is very high.
It's about,
I think it is. Is it going to break us? Is it going to be the thing that, you've gone too far, Viddle? I don't think so. I very much enjoyed the first play of it. There were many discoveries during the play where I realized, oh, this is what he did. This is why he did that. Holy cow. When I build this, it unlocks this, which allows me to do this, and nobody else can do this yet. And that is a huge advantage that I now have, that I just discovered. There's a lot going on in the game. There's a lot of very interesting choices all over the place. Ian O'Toole did the artwork, as he has so many times, knocked it out of the park. It is a gorgeous looking game. It is a very, very interesting game to look at, but it's a bear. It is a bear to teach, and it is a bear. Your first play is going to be a tough one.
It's not one to break out with the relatives at Thanksgiving.
I would not recommend that. But On Mars, we can't wait. I can't wait to play it more. That's all I can. Oh, what I can say about it is that I cannot play.
Our next game was a perfect game to break out with the relatives at Thanksgiving.
Probably the most shocking game of the con for us. All right. So when I first arrived at the convention, sat down with some people to play some little, to do a little game of something. I think he was one of the guys that we played Cooper Island with, actually.
Okay.
No. Yes, it was. We played Cooper Island with this gentleman, and at the end of it, I said, "Have you checked out anything good yet?" And he looked at me and he said, with a straight face, "Jaws."
Was this Monty Bingham? This was
not. This was another person who was not familiar with our podcast, and he just looked at me and said, "Jaws."
Jaws.
And I looked at him and I said, "Jaws?
Jaws?
You mean the game that is a Target exclusive that is only sold in Target stores?" He looked me dead in the eyes and he said, "I'm serious.
Jaws.
Play Jaws." So sure enough, we went back to the main ballroom. We left the after you played On Mars, everybody's looking at you when you get up from the table. They're all really jealous. You can feel the heat, and you have to leave the room. You're not allowed back.
Right.
You're not allowed in the hot games room for a little while after that, because everybody.
It's like when you're eliminated from World Poker.
Yes. Well, here's the thing.
You have like an exit interview.
Exactly. You have an exit interview and everybody is booing or cheering. No, the worst thing was actually you. You caused us a big problem.
What?
You caused us a huge, huge problem.
What?
Because after the rules explanation, you left. So we played 3-player
on
On
Mars.
Mars.
Bad. That's inefficient.
Oh, people were upset. What happened was every 15 minutes in a 3-hour game, people came by, and invariably the conversation was this: "Have you started yet? Mm-hmm. Have you done the rules teach yet?" Mm-hmm. Because there's an empty seat for the game that everybody wants to play. Why are you psychopaths playing a 4-player game that has 1 copy in the entire convention? Why are you playing with only 3?
It was also the case that while you were giving the teach, people kept on coming up and correcting some rule you were teaching.
Yep.
Like the people had played this before.
Yes.
And liked it.
Yes.
Clearly. And they had gotten the teach. And were swooping like everybody, like it was an indication of the quality of the game. It was like they couldn't help but just like swing by and check in and say, "How's it going? Who have you?" Type of thing. And then
two different people trying to be helpful.
It was helpful. It was annoying. That's what it was.
No, but it was also helpful.
It was helpful to you, right? Because you were trying to teach.
I wanted to get it. I wanted to get it right.
I
think I basically did. With their help. Without their help, I would not have gotten it completely right. But yeah, it was one of those games that everybody was circling that table the entire time we were playing
Jaws.
it. Speaking of circling, we went and played Jaws in the main room, and I got to tell you, I think that I had no more fun at that convention than I had playing Jaws.
That was the most fun game we played.
It was amazing.
I don't know if it's the best game we played, but it's a pretty good game.
No.
And it was a lot of fun.
It's not the
best experience.
It's not a great game, but it's a good. If you like Jaws,
you can get this game at Target for $19.99. It's listed for $30. When I got it at Target in Galveston, Texas, this weekend, it was $19.99.
It's incredible. It's incredible. It looks wonderful. It's just a small little box game. It's done by Ravensburger, so hey, you know what? That's not bad. That's a pretty good thing. But you get it out, and like every piece is so perfectly designed. The little barrels that go in the water.
The game has 2 parts. It follows the movie really well. The first part of the
Act
game
1 and Act 2
is a map of Amity island, and the the shark is eating swimmers. And everybody, it's the shark.
16 different
One player is the
individuals.
shark, and then the other 3 players are Hoopa. You have the shark hunter, who is
Quint.
Quint,
Yes.
and then you have Chief Brody.
Anti-shark cage. Shark. Cage goes in the water. Shark is in the water. You're in the water. Farewell and adieu to my sweet Spanish lady.
So it's got a lot of LARP opportunities, as you can see.
We LARPed the heck out of this thing for 2 hours, or for an hour and a half, however long the game was. We could not stop ourselves. We were laughing so hard.
You have 3 people chasing the shark around the island as the shark is consuming a large number of swimmers, including possibly Chief Brody's son, which is worth double. And then depending on how that first part of the game goes, you then flip the board and you enter the stage in which the shark is squaring off against the humans on the orca out in the middle of the sea.
Quint's boat.
Quint's boat. And so
You
now
found
this
it.
is a battle to the death between the shark and the players, and the shark wins by either completely destroying the boat or killing
all the people.
or killing all of the people. And so how well you did in the first half, like the shark gets more shark special power cards. The humans, if they did a little bit better in the start, they get a little bit more equipment. And then you have kind of a wonderful game in which the shark kind of can make 3 different approaches to the ship on every turn. And, it reproduces that part in the movie where the humans on board the boat are kind of looking in all directions. It's like, watch your side of the boat. You over here? Why weren't you looking? This type of thing. And you're trying to decide, you're trying to guess where the shark's going to surface. And each time you're guessing, I think he's gonna show up here, and I'm gonna attack him with my baseball bat, and I'm over here playing it safe, and I'll shoot it with the harpoon gun.
Each character starts with 2 items for the second half of the game, and then there are common crew items.
Yeah.
The number of common crew items you get is entirely dependent on how many swimmers the shark ate in the first half.
Right.
It gets lower and lower the more swimmers get eaten. And the shark has special power cards that allow the shark to do amazing things. And the shark gets more and more of those the more people who were eaten on Amity Island.
But there's a really good game there, which is the mind game. Like, you were in a mind battle with the shark.
Yes.
Where
And I
it's
played-
like
I
it
played the
really
shark,
makes
and I
sense for the shark to
loved
attack
it.
A. Tom's not going to do that, is he? Is he going to go to C? And so it's very much kind of creates the Iocane moment.
Yes.
Of where is the shark going to surface, and different people can, you can coordinate.
Clearly, I cannot choose the boat location next to me.
Right. This is some fantastic gameplay. The shark can be very clever. You need to outthink the shark.
Shark was pretty clever.
And this is a game you can absolutely play with your relatives at Thanksgiving, because I did it. I went and bought the copy. I brought it back, and then I kind of I was going to play, but then we had 4 people that wanted to play, so I just adjudicated the thing, and we had an epic shark battle that kind of went right down to the end. They were down to 3 pieces of boat left, and we had a very courageous Chief Brody who was pursuing the shark in the water.
Quint did in our game. Quint did a little bit in our game.
Well, Quint in our game, strangely, despite being a shark hunter, seemed intent upon rescuing swimmers. He went very against character.
He was
in our
useless.
game. It was useless, right?
We felt that Mark, who played Quint, could have left the table at any point, and the game would have went better for the humans.
Yeah. But so this is a game.
Did your family like it?
Oh, very much so.
Oh yeah. It's a joy.
And it was one. I have a second cousin who's maybe 23 or 24 and had not seen the movie, but now really wants to see the movie.
Oh, it's. I think it's so much better once you've seen the movie.
Yes.
But it's actually a pretty good advertisement for the movie, so it's not bad.
But the mechanics are so simple.
Yes.
That this is an easy to explain game. It you walk up and it might look complicated. It's not. It has a very kind of easy core loop every round of you have 3 actions. These are the things you can do. And it's also a surprisingly social game where the 3 humans need to coordinate their actions against the shark, especially in the first half of the game.
Yes. In both halves, really.
Yeah.
They really need to figure out what they're doing.
It's a good game.
It's a very good game. The one negative is, I believe, so the shark has a hidden movement aspect. So they're writing on a little pad of paper. And I got to see 15 other pads of paper, pieces of paper from the previous round, which confirmed my suspicion, which is the game has its finger on the scales. The game wants the shark to win round 1 and eat a lot of swimmers.
Yeah.
And then the game wants the humans to win in the end. So it wants to mimic the movie. Because of that, I don't know how much could the best shark player in the world win the second act? Can the best humans in the world win the first act? I feel like it's probably going to be same old once you've played it a few times. I think that there are easy house rules that can change that up and make it more of a competition on both sides of the coin. But I do think that it's probably going to need that because I do think the scales are tipped.
The experience of this game is like participating in a movie.
Yes.
And so there is, I think Tom is right that there's some underlying structure there. That said, I think he's making a big deal about nothing. This is not a game that's going to be played at the World Board Gaming Championships. This is not a game where ultimately I'm super concerned about balance. This is a game about a shark and 3 people on a boat. And I think if, even then, I think we argued about how often should the shark win. I think it's a 4-player game. If the shark wins 25% of the time, that's probably okay. I think you suspect that it's not even 25%.
I think it's less, yes.
Okay, fine.
Considerably less.
It doesn't matter. It's a lot of fun. And listen, these days, especially if you got 2 or 3 good plays out of a board game, especially with your family, you're golden. And then if Tom wants to do his own, special add-ons to make the super balanced game of Jaws,
here's my thing. My thing is that I enjoy this game so much that I want to play it winning more than 2 times. I want to be able to play this game 10 times. That's how much I like it. And I
so look for the Jaws sequel, Jaws 2. By Tom to correct the flaws.
Jaws the Revenge.
Jaws to the Revenge to address the flaws of this really fun game.
Look,
coming soon.
You weren't the shark. You don't understand.
Self-published.
Okay, I did everything right on Amity. Okay, I ate Brody's son. Okay, I consumed Brody's son and tons of other.
You are
swimmers.
right that there is an underlying structure that is not immediately obvious, which is that in a sense, the shark really only has 3 turns.
Yes.
And he's going to do a lot of damage on those 3 turns.
Yes.
You could be incompetent as a shark and it could end sooner than that. But generally the humans are going to get you round 3 or 4. And the shark's going to get 6 to 9 swimmers. That's pretty ordained.
Pretty much what it's going to be.
That's fine.
Okay. Fair enough. That was Jaws. Next, we played Sierra West. Sierra West is a game that I had heard some things about, and it sounded like it had some mechanics that were very interesting, and boy, oh boy, it was absolutely true. Sierra West is by Johnny Pack Canton, which I think is one of the best names for a designer of a Wild West game, and the artist is Jakub. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Jacob. Jacob Fajanatowski and
Jakub.
Jakub.
Okay.
Jakub Fajanatowski. Oh boy, I massacred that. And Mikhail Jugaj. No idea. Sorry. It is a gorgeous game. It is weight 3.0, basically. It plays in about 60 minutes, 40 to 60 minutes. It is a gorgeous game in which we are building a mountain by overlapping cards in a certain fashion to make a mountain of cards. You are playing with your own deck of cards until you can climb up that mountain and get some of the cards at the top. It scales. The top card is flipped over and you can claim it by getting there. And once that is gone, then 2 cards beneath it will flip over. Whatever is on top is going to flip over. By gaining these cards, you're going to shuffle them into your deck. The good thing is in this one, unlike Great Western Trail, you could put the card on the top of your deck or on the top of your discard pile. You can choose which, so you can sort of choose when it comes out.
Right.
But the interesting thing is that when you deal your 3 cards to yourself, you are going to choose how they go into your tableau, I think really what it is, and the key is that they are going to overlap.
Yeah, you're doing card programming here almost to create a landscape.
Yes.
For your workers to traverse triggering different actions.
Yes.
Very cool.
Very cool.
And so it has like a tucking mechanism too that kind of works like similar to if you've played Lagrange,
Yes.
where the card, if you just look at the card in its entirety, there's a lot of stuff going on there, and it isn't until you start like placing it, sliding it underneath the game board so that only certain parts of the cards are revealed that you kind of understand the way the cards can be used in multiple ways. That's very clever.
You essentially have two workers, one that moves along the green track of the cards that have overlapped each other, and one that moves along the brown track. And depending upon
Play that game.
which order you put those three cards and how they overlap each other, you can create radically different paths that unlock radically different benefits and occasionally costs to them. Very, very interesting. That said, and another cool thing about the game is that it's got 4 different modes, 4 different sets. So
Yeah,
a little
this
bit
is
like
another game
New Dale.
where there's different chapters that are going to introduce different mechanisms as you play, and you're expected to play through the scenarios.
So given all of that, we were very, very excited to play it. And I'm sorry to say that it did not live up to its mechanisms. It is a very, very interesting game that plays too quick. There are too few really meaningful, meaty decisions that you come down to. And I suspect that at 3 and 2 player, it is going to play better because it's going to be a longer experience. There's going to be, it felt like the game ended before we had even got to the most interesting parts of it.
Yeah, I had a similar experience where like we were doing the teach, and I was like, this is very cool. And then we played it, and I was very frustrated with kind of like the lack of real decisions, the lack of kind of interesting things happening. And so like the early promise of which is rare.
Yeah.
The early promise of the teach just what did not come about, made me wonder if I was missing something. I don't think that we were, though.
The rules are not that hard, so it's very clear.
Yeah.
We didn't miss anything.
So like there's a number of games I played this weekend where I said I'm eager to play another round of this so I can understand it better. A lot of games made that list. This one I would need to hear from another player who I knew pretty well to say, no, this is really good. You should give it a second shot for me to give it a second shot. Right now,
Yeah.
I think there's too many games I want to play for me to circle back to this.
If you are a game designer and you're designing card-based games, you probably need to play this because it is innovative.
It's certainly a study of like, I can see why it got published.
Yes.
There's a lot to be excited about here, but like the actual execution at that point didn't happen.
No, you don't need to buy this game. You don't need to play this game. If you're a designer, you should seek it out and try it because it's got some very interesting things that it does.
Yeah, like
both
you could
in terms
see
of the graphic design, the design of it, the graphic design of it is kind of beautiful as well. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Next, Trey, tell me about The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9. This is one of the games that all weekend I wanted to play. And
You didn't actually get to play?
I didn't actually get to play it. You did.
Yeah, and so this is in German. This is what, Die Crew or something?
Die Crew.
Die Crew. Sorry, my German is poor.
Mine is no better.
This is just a card game. It's a trick-taking game. It's another Chronicle game. Again, don't know if that's the right mechanism word for it, but every time you play this game, you can play through one of like 50-something scenarios. The theme of the game is, I think you are, you're like on a space station. You're doing missions as part of a human team. Each player is a member of the team, and then the commander is a kind of important role in the game. Each hand you play, one person's the commander because this is the person who's dealt the highest trump card. There's only 4 trump cards. But if you've played Spades or Hearts or Wizard or even Teach You, this is a game in that tradition.
Trick-taking.
Yeah. Trick-taking games. And essentially each one of the scenarios is a different puzzle for you as a group to solve.
So a little bit like Hanabi. In the sense that you're trying to take tricks, but what you really want is to solve the scenario. The commander has to take tricks 1 and 6 and things like that, right?
Yeah, each one of these introduces like a new rule, and they can be very different. It's not necessarily progressive, and the game restricts the amount of communication you have. You're not allowed to disclose the contents of your hand. It does have some very simple mechanisms for how you can communicate some information. For example, most of the scenarios involve you being able to play a single card face up that you have not played yet. You're not actually introducing it into the trick, but you can signal like, here's a card, and I have a little token that can indicate this is my highest card of this suit, this is my lowest card of this suit, or this is my only card of this suit. And that's a valuable piece of information to your fellow players to help them decide what they should lead in order to achieve the rounds of the game. Simple game. It's a good prison game because you could completely reconstruct this just with two decks of cards, other than the book of scenarios, which kind of each one of them introduces a different rule that you have to play with, and they get increasingly like you don't want to just flip to scenario 40 and play that. You need to have kind of learned some of like the rules of trick-taking games as you play the game in order to build up to the more difficult scenarios.
So I love Teach You. It's one of my favorite games of all time. There's nothing I like playing with my wife better than this. I love the mind. I love the experience of playing the mind. This to me feels like a game that might have a lot of legs. Like it's there's so much going on.
Right.
It has a fairly easy to understand basic mechanism that is varied tremendously over the various scenarios. It seems really cool.
Yeah, I and you're just going to buy it, and it's going to be, it's a card game. So what's it going to cost? You can't get it now.
Not in the US yet.
Yeah, you can't get it yet. And I could even see like you're going to buy this, and then people are going to do a bunch of their own scenarios.
Yeah.
For it. So this is kind of hitting that nice design sweet spot where it's super simple in what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a ton of gameplay out of it. So this was definitely a big hit.
It's the saddest thing that I have for a weekend that was not sad at all. It's really pretty much my only regret that I did not get to play that game, because watching you play it, I was like, oh, this looks really interesting.
And I was two of the three people playing the game were a little too tired to be playing it because it's challenging in the same way that a good trick-taking game is.
Right.
Like you may need to be counting cards. You need to keep track of what who's out of what suit in order to make the ideal play. So if you're enjoying that, the head game of bridge or Teach You, this is really in that wheelhouse, and it will be that demanding, but that's what's going to be so excellent about it.
So The Crew, keep an eye out for it when it is out. We'll be announcing it here on the podcast for sure, but definitely a game that I want to get and play. We do want to say a couple more things, some general takeaways and some things in general about the con. First of all, we wore our wonderful Game Brain t-shirts with us pretty much every day. They got a little stinky toward the end, but we did wear them. And every day of the con, we ran into fans of the podcast, and that's a new thing for us. And we were very, 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 very happy. We found some amazing.
Yes, we
really
want to
nice
encourage
people.
this.
Yes,
If you see the blue t-shirt, please come up, say hi.
Tickle Trey. That's what we say.
That nobody says that.
Nobody says that. Who can you name some of the people that we?
So some of the people we met on this we met Amanda Bennett.
Yes.
We met Blake Martin. They came over while we were playing Crystal Palace and checked out the game. We got a picture. I think we'll if you go to our Facebook group, you'll see these pictures. We made friends with Benjamin Yamada. He was also at Tabletop Network with me, and his wife Elizabeth listens to the podcast.
Yeah, we played Marco Polo 2 with him. That was a lot of fun.
Elizabeth follows us because she grew up with Laura Darlington. Alfred Darlington, whoever that is. She started watching the podcast. We played a game with Monty Bingham and also Xavier Williams.
It was a really fun playing Taverns of Tiefenthal with him. He was a blast.
So it's good. It was nice to like actually hear that there actually are people listening to this. There really are people around the country who listen to the podcast, and so it's great to hear back from them.
And then general takeaways. Let's quickly go through what we generally feel. First thing I will say is that multiplayer solitaire is the rule of the day. We played a lot of very interesting games that were essentially multiplayer solitaire. A lot of designers seem to be backing away from mechanics in which my choice alters what your choice is. There were a lot of action selection mechanisms that were acting as though they were worker placement, but they did nothing to deny anybody else anything. And
this seems to be a trend,
yes,
and it's not one I think that we're necessarily happy about.
Correct.
But we played a lot of games that did that this weekend, so they're coming. Number two, so that's number one, or kind of takeaways from Bgg.Con. Number two was what we'll call the baroqueness
Yes.
of a lot of these games. I thought we were moving in kind of game design and in the market towards simplification and elegance as kind of the standard. And I think we are still seeing that be a goal of a lot of designers, but maybe we've seen kind of a bifurcation of like games that are going to expand the market or expand to, less hardcore gamers. And then there are plenty of designers who are embracing the more hardcore elements of the hobby and are producing more and more complex games.
Which I don't think is a positive or a negative.
It is.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy that everything isn't getting just simpler. I'm very happy that the Vitals of the world are out there.
Yeah, On Mars was probably the biggest example of this, of just like there's a lot of games out there that are going to be big teaches.
I want mad geniuses. I want mad geniuses in the hobby. I don't want to play a mad genius game every single week, but I'm very, very happy that they're there and they're doing that.
Well, sometimes in my mind, my mind, mad genius can mean elegance, though. It can mean keeping it simple rather than having to have a 70-minute teach, which it seemed like some of these kind of do. But that's happening. Remember, there's just an observation. That's happening. There's no shortage of highly complex board games coming out. And then the third trend is, again, I don't know if this is the right word for it, but we seem to encounter a lot of games that have kind of a chronicle aspect, which is that there's some core game mechanics there, and then you're going to play multiple scenarios. Maybe this is the Gloomhavening of the industry or something, but even like the card game, The Crew, like you need the little book.
Many different aspects. I think it's basically getting toward game extension. I think is really what it's about. It's about taking these medium weight games that are not going to have a tremendous amount of longevity, and then the designers figure out ways to, okay, now try it with this little add-on, try it with this rule change, try it with this new board or this new essence or this new element. I think that's a really good thing. I think it's great when designers think about what is the 10th play going to be like, what is the 20th play going to be like. Listen, the greatest games don't need to have a chronicle element in order to have it be playable hundreds of times.
And this isn't Legacy. This is a slight difference than Legacy, but it might be like the second generation of Legacy, because Legacy is not possible in so many things, but scenarios kind of are. And if some people I know are still measuring their like value of a board game in terms of number of plays they get. I don't tend to do that, but a lot of people do. So like being able to extend the life of a board game through this, mechanism might make a lot of sense.
Certainly not bad. And lastly, let's just say this was my first Bgg.Con, and I had a blast. I had a blast with you, Trey. I had a blast with our friend Mark. And this
met a lot of people. Yeah,
really, really did. Just I didn't meet a disagreeable person the entire weekend. It was just a blast.
If you are looking for the convention in which you're just going to go and play board games and play more board games and then play some more board games, it's not Gen Con.
Nope.
It's
nope.
this.
It's
Bgg.Con. And so if you are that person, you should definitely be checking out Bgg.Con. And they, like we said, they're doing them a couple times a year, plus the cruise. So it's in the center of the country.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for urging me to come, because you had been to one before. I had never been to this con before, and I am so happy. My life is more rich for having gone, and I look forward to going again.